Welcome to the Women in Music panel. We're so excited to be here. My name is Kaylin Waterman. I also go by Vesper. My music project is Vesper. I'm from Detroit, Michigan, and I've been making music probably for a little over 10 years now. We're going to go around and do introductions so that you can meet all of these wonderful ladies. And we'd love for you to get to know them. We're going to have a lot of really good discussions today. So we'll start with introductions.
All right, my name is Jenny Jones. I actually am on staff with Title Track, which is a new nonprofit that Seth founded in April of this year. I'm part of their administrative and development team. But as a part of why I'm on this panel, I am a singer-songwriter. I play cello, piano, and guitar. But I also help run social media for the ARC in Ann Arbor. I manage music at an Ypsi coffee house, tap house called Cultivate. I've been doing that for 4 years. And I also have my own kind of connector business where I connect musicians with businesses and other venues. So for instance, the ARC or Cultivate can't accommodate, I also try and connect them with other venues. I don't like to say no if there's other opportunities, but I always know that music and business and people all go together.
My name is Jess Kramer. I am a one-woman band. Been playing with my solo project. This material is about 14 years old now. And I also am a founding member of Lady Fest Grand Rapids, which is no longer active, but I put on that festival for 5 years as well, so a rock camp for kids. We just finished our 7th year.
I'm Sav Beist. I play violin, guitar, and bass, and sing and write for the Accidentals.
Robin Lee Berry, singer-songwriter for several decades. We'll go with over 40. And happy to be finally understanding writing music. I've been living in Michigan primarily and performing and writing. So I'm eager to hear more. Glad to be here.
My name is Katie Larson. I play cello and guitar and sing and write for the Accidentals as well. We are full-time touring on the road, part-time teaching, and part-time arranging and composing.
Forgot to tell you a little bit more about myself. Other than playing music, I am also the operations manager at Assemble Sound, which is a music licensing company and artist development label in Detroit. And so we run an artist residency once a year out of an old 1870s German Protestant church in Corktown, which is a pretty old neighborhood in Detroit. So one of my tasks is to write curriculum and kind of direct the artist residency. And it's typically artists between the ages of 18 and 50 or so. We don't really have a real limit, but most of the artists are between, like, I would say 18 and like 38 or so. And then the music licensing side, we have an entire catalog of primarily Detroit, but very much so all across Michigan music. Some artists here are in the catalog, I'm in the catalog, Seth is in the catalog, and we'd love to have more submissions from here if you're interested. And we, our goal is to make, to kind of reinfuse Detroit specifically, but also the state of Michigan's creative economy and allow for musicians to make their living here instead of having to move to the coasts. So we're able to place music in television and commercials and movies and ads and things like that. And my favorite thing is putting money in artists' pockets. It's my favorite thing. I love sending checks. So come see me if you have a song that you think would be great for sync licensing. Okay, so I want to start out by...
Extra layer, would you mind if I add something to that?
Sure.
Being in the morning coma and thinking about this rhubarb compote thing, I got a little stalled, but I want to add too, since we are talking about the other layer of things that we do as musicians, I've been a part owner in a venue in northern Michigan called Freshwater Art Gallery, and it's also a concert venue. We've had 10 years of extraordinary shows come across that stage. We do a winter concert series, 8 shows a year. And so that's become a real foothold in northern Michigan, and it helped a lot of other places around our area take that template and start their own venues using basically the motif we've borrowed, and it's been very successful. now we've turned our stage at Freshwater into an open mic on Monday nights, which is pulling people out of bars and restaurants to hear their work without contest of BMI, as all those things. So we have an open mic, and that's turning into a regular year-round thing that's allowing people an opportunity to go someplace on a really good stage and hear their own music. So that's kind of where I've been working lately in our up north area, which is then we will talk to other venues and try to be the cornerstone gig and help an artist sling a few more gigs within a 200-mile radius, and
Awesome.
we've been doing that for about 10 years. So we should hook up.
Would love that. It's actually a great segue into my first question, and this is a little bit vague, but I wanted to kind of get you ladies talking and allow everyone to kind of get to know you a little better. But I wanted to ask, what does it feel like to be you, period? Because each of you have listed other things that you do outside of being purely a performative artist. Each of you have talked about projects that you're doing and ways that you're passionate and the ways that you're giving back. But we all know that it's not easy. And we all know that walking into a room as a lady and playing music is difficult, but it could also be really beautiful. So I don't want to make assumptions about what your experience is. So I would just love to hear, in just a few words, what it's like to be you as a woman who makes music here in Michigan and all across the country. For those of you who travel.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, I'll go first. I haven't been asked what it's like to be me, maybe ever. Yeah.
Great.
Good question. Scary question.
I feel like I approach music with a very specific lens. I'm more of a technical brain. A lot of what I do for work is like the finance and the organizing for artists, which is a weird, interesting place to spend 40+ hours a week. But I also approach creative projects, and most of my creative projects are musical, walking into a space as a lesbian and as a single parent and as a fat woman, and all of these things that have shaped exactly the way in which I walk into a room. So I know that there are a lot of experiences that I haven't had that a lot of other women musicians have had. But I think what it comes down to is it's made music even more important to me because I feel like I have this very specific experience and somehow it becomes relatable when you write songs. It's really easy to feel alone and like you're the only person out there with your specific set of identities, and being able to play music and perform live specifically, although you get a little bit of it with releasing albums, is this really quick way to remind yourself that like the human experience is really easy to share and easy to connect with people when you put it to like a little melody and go on stage. So for me, it's been very therapeutic. I haven't wanted the performance side to be a job personally, but it's been like a really intense hobby for a long time. And so being able to take these times that I'm not at work to go out and connect with people has been really valuable to shaping my view of the world.
It's such an interesting question, so I don't really have the greatest of answers for it, but I do like to tell people that in addition to what I do, I also have a full-time job. So I work for an engineering consulting firm, and I have for the last 15 years. But it's not as challenging as, say, working with a network of people who love their art and want to impact people for that. The engineering consultant's just a little different. So like my passion lies in just connecting people. But it's interesting because to be me is I am friends with the people that I work with. I want to make sure that they're doing what's best for them, but I also value those friendships too. So when it comes to working with people and doing gigs and understanding all the messiness that goes along with that, it's a lot. So I have enjoyed doing what I do, but also you kind of lose yourself in it. And I was like sharing this with Sab and Katie earlier and with Seth yesterday, is sometimes like I'm an empath. So if someone is having a really hard time with something, I absorb all of that. And that happens with people that I work with, and sometimes it makes me work harder for them, which is great. But also it gives me like this, sorry, RBF, because I'm thinking about a lot of things. And I'm thinking about how to make things better for them, but also for myself. So what it's like to be me is just to be perpetually busy and always thinking about the next thing, but I enjoy that level of, you know, everything that I do, and have made so many connections with people that are just invaluable, and I don't want it to stop. I mean, I want my full-time job to stop. That'd be great. They're not here, so. But I have very much enjoyed, you know, all that I have, you know, been through and worked up to this point. But I think Molly said it last night on this stage. She's like, to keep doing something, you know, the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is basically insanity. And I mean, I know she quoted someone else, but
Einstein.
there we go. Thank you.
Start small.
Einstein. Thank you. But it was one of those things where that's what I was doing, and I changed a few things up, and different things have started happening. But that kind of gives me a better idea of, you know, who I am as a person and how I respond to things. So letting those things hit me are important, and they help me see me and how I react and respond with other people. But I have very much enjoyed, like, making those mistakes, even though if I said that, like, in the moment, that would not be true. I've enjoyed them, like, after I've learned, you know, how to, you know, deal with them and what not to do again. But working with people is messy, but it's such a beautiful and rewarding thing, and especially musicians. They have so much. Musicians speak a language that everyone understands. So I just want to keep pushing on that. So that's what it's like.
Oh man. Okay. I think I would say, you know, Katie and I are kind of attached at the hip, but if we're speaking individually, I can say for myself that I'm completely shaped by the female role models that I've been privileged enough to grow up around in Northern Michigan and in Michigan as a whole. There are a lot of female artists here, a lot, more than I've seen in a lot of other communities, and we've had the opportunity to travel and experience the other communities. This is an incredibly supportive community that's constantly growing and learning and changing and figuring out how to be more and more supportive all the time. And so I'm incredibly shaped by these really powerful, strong women who I've been lucky to grow up around. And I think, you know, you guys are right that music is kind of this universal language, and it's given me a bridge in which I can connect to people where there wasn't before. I have a really hard time being social. I'm pretty shy at heart, and so music brought me out of this shell, and I would not be the same person without it. And it's made me tougher. It's made me stronger and smarter. We've experienced a lot of stuff out there, and everybody experiences different things, and it shapes them to be different people. But I can say that I don't regret anything that we've ever done as part of the band, because everything that's ever happened to us has made me into a person that I'm constantly proud of, because that person is constantly learning. So I guess I would say that if it's like, to be me is like to be constantly open to learning and constantly open to conversation, because that's what builds good music, and it's what, you know, what builds good people and good communities. So I want to continue to be a part of that. Yeah, you take that, Robin.
We're back to what's it like to be me. They did break molds. There are people they broke molds about, you know. I came through music in a kind of a, I guess, it's like looking back in history, almost a half a century, really. In my first life, young person, 2 children, knew I had to play music. Everything else filtered away. There was a wolf in there that was going, sorry, but you're not supposed to type. Just find a better job. Here's a shovel till you figure out what it is. And it ended up just, I have to play music. And I had to find a way to play music in non-instrument holding scenarios. So I shopped for piano players who just don't want to listen to ya. And they got 10 fingers, and they'll go where they want. So I was like, you guys, we got to meet in the middle. You got 10, I got a voice. Can we work together? And piano players turned out not to be a solution, and it kept coming back. Be your complete instrument. You have to walk. Be the bones of your songs. Be them. Do it. So at home, after I bought a Takamine, with and started practicing. I learned songs. I learned hard songs, James Taylor songs. I learned Joni Mitchell songs because they're weird and they're hard. And I had 20 songs, and I broke into the cafe. There was a cafe in East Lansing on MAC Avenue. It was like a old world. And Frank Youngman would know about it because we all would bust in there and listen to Joel Mabus and Sally Rogers and Claudia Schmidt and all these local real strongholds of early music, Mabus especially. Well, I watched how they set the equipment up. I missed auditions by 2 months. There was another month to go. I need a job like crazy. So I snuck in at lunch. And all the gear was behind the piano. So I pulled it out and plugged it in. Oh my God, scared to death someone was going to, pee first, and do not take laxatives when you're going to do a gig. Just so you know, just stay away from those. So you got everything right there. I heard that from some other artist. She was a dancer too, and she said, just don't do that. I plug it all in, and I'm sitting there, and I'm through maybe 10 songs, so I've been there about a half an hour, 45 minutes through all my songs, and a manager pokes her head around the back wall, like, what's going on in there? And I'm like, huh, way on the other side of the room, but I see her. Then she puts a foot around, and she listens. And then she comes around and stands and listens. And Joel Mabus is sitting right in front of her. And as I finished the song, she walks up and she said, what are you doing Tuesdays? It was just like that. Then I go back and talk to Joel Mabus, and he goes, well, you're not much of a guitar player. And I was going, thanks, Joel. That's like high compliments, And that was how I started. It was just bold, go there. I don't know. They were on vacation. I got the summer gigs because they came up here to do festivals. I didn't know what a festival was because I had 2 babies. And so I jumped in with a baby and a guitar and going, this is going to have to frickin' work because I can't put down either one of them. And so then you do the roller coaster. Now, how do you do it? A glass board, and you lay out a grid, and that's how you lay out your first album, is through glass and a light plate. It's like old days, how they did back then. And each one of those came out of the lunch money, And so I crawled my way through this, but what I did was, what it's like to be me was, I got to call the shots. I got to say who plays on this. I got to say the bump goes here, and if it just falls apart there, that stays. I got to do every little bit of that. And that made me feel mighty inside when the world was crushing. And the rest of my self-talk wasn't mighty. That was the place I could be able to unfold and not let anybody else truly affect that. I mean, criticism's out there. But that boldness to go, I have to, I'm paying for it. I don't want that in there. I want it to sound this way. And now as I come through, there's 4 or 5 albums behind me, and I'm working on another one, and I'm so welcoming the stone soup it becomes. Because now I can go ahead and put it out there and go, you add. You bring what you hear. I want to hear where middle ground is now. I get this, where I'm coming from. But I'm going to leave room in my songs from here on forever for anyone else to bring their self to it. A juice harp to humming to anything. I just want to leave room now for us. Which is kind of an extraordinary experience. And how do you fund that? It's about this community. It really is. I've had to resort in the lack of ability to produce a product with a tutu is what I'm calling it. Fluff it out. I can't get these recordings together fast enough. I'm writing a lot of music. I wanted to get out there, so I brought a lyric page this time, and said, "This is what it is. You can't hear all over, from the second stage, from this stage to that stage. This is a part that means something to me, so I'm going to publish the lyrics more, get them right out there. They're on my Facebook now, because they're about what's happening. They're about please find your heart. Let's jump on board. What's going on here? Let's, come alive. So, I've had a hoop hop, lots of them. There's layers and layers of unbelievable, discouraging experiences that you have to. I dragged 4-foot-tall speakers on sleds from my house down to the main road. I mean, just shit like that. And you're going, really? Stand in the driveway and going, really? Is this again? This is it? Really? And they go, yeah. Why? I get a horoscope. It says, yes, certain danger ahead.
And you have to weave a parachute out of all the broken things in your life and steer clear. And it was like, holy what? That's the whole thing of it. Everything, all those lessons. I begrudge them when they happen. I like, why me? You go through that whole list of, I'm not going to bite until you finally hear it and you go, oh, redirect, dummy. Redirect, no judgment, move forward, scream forward, we need you.
Thank you. I love hearing about that because Sav and I, we grew up in a very different landscape. I think Sav mentioned we have lots of female role models, and we grew up in Traverse City with a really healthy music program in the schools. So we met through our high school orchestra program, and I'm 23 and Sav's 24, and we started the band when we were 17. So a lot of questions that I'm asking myself now is like, what does it mean to be a young woman or this semi-adult that I'm morphing into, especially with being on a part of the scene since we were teenagers, and kind of finding a way to evolve and develop when everyone knows the goofy songs that you wrote when you were in high school. And so that's been an interesting challenge, but I feel super grateful to be part of the scene and all the support that we had growing up, jamming with the local artists and being able to play strings with people, and people giving us the opportunity to mess up and the opportunity to learn and grow. A typical day for us is, there's not really a typical day, I guess. At this point, we run a lot of our own business, and we've been through a lot of different deals, but consistently we've always ran our own finances and logistics. We do our own merch fulfillment, and we co-produce all of our own music, and been trying to teach and doing a lot of things. We're really passionate about it, but it's hard to do everything well. So one thing we're working on is being able to balance the healthy workload and personal life, and it's just been an evolution, so we're still working on it.
Thank you so much for these great answers. It's amazing. All this is doing is making me want to know each of you way better, especially y'all. I've seen you for years, you know what I mean? And you're women now. It's crazy. It's really crazy. What, you said 23 and 24. I'm like, where have I been? You were 18 like yesterday. So I just want to spend a really brief moment on this next question because I want to move on to the next one after it. But I do want to talk about what you feel like your greatest challenge is as a woman in music. I know for me, I'll never forget one time this is an old band of mine, the Normandies, and we did like kind of soul folk music, and we got booked at the Blind Pig, and we were so pumped, as you are when you're young and you're excited to play that smoky place, and well, not smoky anymore, I guess, but we walked in, and I'll never forget the house manager came up, walked right past me, and walked up to the tallest guy in the group, who happened to be my drummer and a dear friend, Josh Fafelsky, and began to ask all the questions about Run a Show. And Josh was just like, I don't know. I have no idea. She's it's her. And it's so funny, like, I'm a very, like, my temper is a real thing. I'm a pretty passionate person. But in that moment, I just realized, I was like, wow, like, they don't even see me here, at all, until it's time for me to get on stage looking pretty and I can be hit on. Then they'll see me, obviously, But as far as, like, being a part of this, the logistics and the technicalities and all of those things, all of which I planned, all of the music that I wrote, they still, do not see me. So for me, that was one of my biggest challenges. Like, it's overcomable. It really is. But just understanding that I wasn't seen was difficult. And I think I'm kind of between you three right there. I'm kind of in the middle, where I definitely had some incredible female role models in the Detroit music scene. I definitely had enough fire in me and loved music enough to not care, not give a shit anyway. But there were still a lot of that, like, male-charged rooms when I was, making music in, like, the pre-2010 era. And it has gotten a lot better, but that, like, not being seen was a really big one for me. So I'd love to hear briefly from all of you what that is for you, and then we're going to talk about something else before our time is up. So.
I would say Katie and I have experienced a lot of ageism. That's been the constant. And I think it's because when you see a bunch of young people, the story has stereotypically been that they trash the green room, they destroy the place, they're not very respectful of other people. I don't really know where that story came from. I'm sure that it exists for some young bands, but the story needs to change because I've seen a lot of young bands that are completely the opposite. I had somebody come up to us at a show last night and be like, it's really good to see a young band be good and talented at music. And I was like, you should see Political Lizard, you should see Olivia Mainville, you should see Lipstick Jody. There's so many young artists in Michigan right now. You just need to see it. So yeah, I would say that ageism is has been a big challenge, but usually after we sound check, people start closing their mouths about it. So.
You know, I hate, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but my biggest challenge has been sound engineers in the studio and live performance, and this assumption that I don't know what I'm doing. And the rig that I play, when I set it up, I very much built myself. It's not a typical rig. It has its quirks, and I know how to troubleshoot it. So I've had a lot of challenges just explaining to people, like, that's not where this needs to plug in. I need you to EQ this differently. And then, you know, we get to a point where it gets better, but that initial working with a new engineer is hard. And then in the studio process, I've been through some challenges of male engineers feeling like they can produce it in a way that will sound better without asking me what I think first. To the point where this last album, as sort of an exercise in reminding myself what I'm capable of, I was like, I am going to do everything on my own for this album. I'm going to mix, master, record it all, just to see what will happen and see if anybody points out a difference. And it was a really empowering moment, although it took way too long. So, you know, I think sometimes you just have to remember, like, oh, I can also make that track really catchy and give it the beats that it needs, and I'm not relying on this person. They're actually just here to help if I want them to.
I think my biggest challenge is that I didn't have enough female role models who do what I do. And so me kind of releasing an album 8 years ago, I had a producer that had a specific sound, so now I kind of hear that every time I listen to my album and kind of go, man, if I had just spoken up, maybe, you know. And then taking it one step further, starting to help those or go to festivals and kind of get that experience, I was around males all the time. The attorneys, the promoters, like everyone. And sometimes there was no one to advocate for me and what I should learn. So if there were guys that were trying to learn, they got that preferential treatment. If I was at a festival, backs were turned on me because they didn't know who I was, and I was just someone who was fetching something for someone. So I realized that a lot of opportunities were passing me by, and I was like, maybe I should just speak up. It's like, no, the people who invited you to this, who were like, you know, inviting you to take part, enjoy yourself, inviting you to, like, those are the people that should have invested in me. So sometimes I get a little bitter. Like, I really enjoyed myself at these festivals, but I got really pissed when I looked back and was like, no one introduced me to that person. I hear names all the time, and I'm like, no, I don't know who that is. I probably should have known, but I remember, you know, just there were a lot of things that I look back on that some people just, they didn't really think about. I get it. They didn't think about, you know, take that person. There have been some women in my life. I'll just give a shout out to Stephanie Belcher at Dime, for sure. She's been like, hey, you need to meet this person. I'm going to introduce you. You know, she's like, God's timing is perfect. It won't work right now, but I'm going to make it happen. And she's been someone who has introduced me to a lot of people that I've appreciated. 4 minutes. Okay. All right. But that's kind of been my biggest challenge, is not having an advocate that, you know, if I didn't know the right person to talk to, like, I wasn't being introduced. And so a lot of it was a lot of self-learning.
I hate to cut this question short. If anyone has a burning answer to this, go for it. But I really want to switch to the next question, which is I really want to hear from you on what solutions that you found, because I know in the panels like this, we often focus on the challenges we face, and we know that as women in music, we're walking challenges. Like, that's our life. We're aware of that, but I really want to talk about some of the solutions that you faced, and then also how you want to see your male allies supporting you, how you want to see them step up and support you in other ways.
Yeah, I actually prepared for this question. I got really nervous about this panel. I wanted to say the right things because I think it's a super important and crucial topic, and I want to thank you for opening up the conversation. It's really important to be talking about it. Yeah, that's one of the solutions, I think, is to start having conversations about it, to make people aware. Brandy Carlisle just had a panel at Americana Fest that I attended called Changing the Conversation, which was about inclusivity and equality in the industry. And what I found really amazing about it was that she was encouraging lack of competition between women, both societally and in the music industry, because she admitted that she'd been part of the problem in that she viewed successful women with troubled past differently than she viewed successful men with the same troubled past. It's super important to look at the way that we perceive successful women with traumatic public instances like the Dixie Chicks or like Britney Spears or Joan Rivers or Stevie Nicks or Amy Winehouse. I could go on and on about successful women who have been under the public eye and been scrutinized differently than figures like Johnny Cash or Elvis Presley. So one of the solutions is changing the way that we look at successful women and either holding men to the same standard or glorifying the successful woman the same way we glorify Elvis Presley and Johnny Cash. I think another solution that we could do to curb sexism in the industry is to recognize that the problem doesn't necessarily start anywhere. It doesn't start with the booking agencies. It doesn't start with the promoters. It starts, it doesn't need to start anywhere. It's not a matter of finding blame. It's a matter of finding solutions and moving forward and creating opportunities and venues and festivals like this one to prove that you can sell an all-female lineup or a 50-50 male-female lineup and you won't lose any ticket sales because of it. So opening up those spaces and creating that kind of collaboration. And lastly, I think the another way that we can curb it is to love and support each other and to be open to each other, to not treat it like a competition, I guess, to not shut each other down. I think if we continue to collaborate and to book each other for shows and prove that these things are successful, it's just a way to open up the music industry for more and more women to join in and keep the door open.
Well, maybe as a caveat, I think I needed a permission slip. I needed a permission slip to be fully myself, and that's the industry. We start right inside here. Women expect more lovingly from our peers, offer more lovingly, but start right in here and get strong with that. That's where it changes. We can't ask somebody else to do something we can't do from inside. So sing!
Thank you so much for joining us. We would love to talk much more.